Welcome to the QuarkXPress Masterclass training series. This is the 5th series concentrating on production. My name is Matthias Günther and I'm going to lead you through this webinar. Today in this series, on this episode, we're going to concentrate on PDF, PDFX, CMS or color management system mostly. And as in the prior classes, you can play and pause and stop this pre-recorded video yourself at your own speed. So you get a phone call, just quickly pause it and then continue afterwards. The class itself, so this video will run for 30 minutes and we're here live. So during this class and up to 15 minutes afterwards, you can ask questions in the Q&A panel and we'll address them right away. Please, one thing, please don't ask tech support questions. I know you want to have them answered. I'm going to show you support options at the end of the webinar, but typically tech support questions are too individual to answer in a webinar, so that's why we can't answer them here. This is the QuarkXPress Masterclass, meaning we're not going to repeat you what's written in the manual. We are trying to give you helpful tips and tricks that you can use in production. In the past episodes, we've heard great feedback that we had something for everybody. If in this class you know everything, be proud, because that means that you're probably a master yourself. We're going to concentrate here on QuarkXPress 10.2.1 to be exact, the latest version of version 10. A lot of the things I'm going to show you are also applicable for legacy, for previous versions of QuarkXPress, so 8 or 9, maybe even 7. So I'm going to tell you once something is specific to version 10. I think I only have one topic that's specific to version 10. What we're going to cover today is several topics. I'm going to go around PDF mostly, 3 ways to export a PDF out of QuarkXPress. I'm going to talk about the options of the PDF export. I'm going to show you how to configure color management and 3 easy steps. I'm going to show you how to create a PDFX out of QuarkXPress. We're also going to create a screen PDF, and at the end we're going to export a book. So a book that consists out of several QuarkXPress documents into one single PDF. And that last feature is a QuarkXPress 10 only feature. So let's start. So what ways do we have to export a PDF out of QuarkXPress? If you come from version 3 or 4, probably you know the way how we used to create PDF by printing to Distiller or using the print dialog to create a postscript and then using Distiller to do that. Of course, you could still do that. So you can still go to the print dialog, and if you have the Distiller printer available, or if you go to printer and then do save as PDF, you could theoretically create a PDF like that. However, that's not really recommended because QuarkXPress now thinks you want to create a print file asking you to specify a PPD and all this kind of stuff. Typically attributes that a PDF doesn't want to have. So that's probably the worst idea you can have to create a PDF here. There's 2 other ways how you can create a PDF that are recommended. First, if you still think that you should use Distiller because you have maybe centralized Distiller settings or it's a workflow that works for you, you can still do so with QuarkXPress, and I'm going to show you how you should do that. So first go to QuarkXPress Preferences, and in Preferences you go to PDF, and here you just need to set the preference to create PostScript file for later distilling. If you want to, you can use a watched folder where everything gets written into. I'm going to not do that. Just have reset the preference, and I'm going to press my Command Option P, which brings up the export as PDF dialog. And here what you can see is you have options down here, and in the options I'm going to talk about later. You should look into the options to set everything, but just for the moment now, have a look at what's happening here. Though you have the export as PDF functionality, you're actually creating a PostScript file for later distilling. So if that's what you want to do, that's the second way or a good way to actually create a PDF. The best way, and what I recommend you, is you go back to your preference and you just reset the PDF preference to direct to PDF. So if you say, okay, now you can export a PDF using the same dialog. So either pressing the command key or going to export layout as PDF and then export your PDF file here. So let's have a look at the options here that we have. If you go down here to options, the first thing you see is pages. I only have one page in this demo file, so all in one doesn't really matter. But if you have a longer document, of course, you can put in 1 to 20, and you should probably have a PDF style prepared. Since we don't have that, let's go back to all. Let's have a look at options, what we can see in here. So if you look at options, you can see that I have a PDF style. That's again my output styles that I should prepare. And of course you can use any of the prepared, the included default styles. I recommend create your own style. It is tailored to your need, maybe several ones, one for print, one for screen, one for proofing, and I'm going to walk you through that. So the first thing that you should decide is, do you want a PDF or do you need a PDFX? You probably know what a PDFX is. It's basically a subset of PDF that is tailored for printing. So your printer, or if you're a printer yourself, will know whether you need a PDF X1A or 3, and I'm going to talk about PDF X4 in a second. By going through the export options, I think they're pretty self-explanatory. The things that I want to highlight is compression. Compression is a very important thing to understand here, because a lot of people look at Distiller, and Distiller talks about quality. QuarkXPress talks about compression level. So if you do a high compression, so very high JPEG compression, that means your quality is going to be bad. So what you should do is, if you go for compression, go for a low one. I recommend using automatic zip JPEG low, meaning QuarkXPress will automatically decide whether to use a zip compression or a JPEG compression, and the JPEG is going to be a low compression, so you probably won't see any artifacts. If you're afraid about seeing artifacts, then go for a manual zip 8-bit compression. Don't choose the 4-bit, it's going to lose data also for you. So use the manual 8-bit. But I think you can choose the low settings. It's going to be okay. It's not going to show you any artifacts. But of course, in any kind of output workflow, you should always proof the result before printing. Same thing for grayscale images, use an automatic zip low, and then for monochrome images, I would use the zip setting. You can compress text in line art. The ASCII format is only needed if you have difficulties with devices that choke on binary formats. And then of course it's important whether you want to downsample the resolution, but that's something you probably know yourself. If you don't choose anything here, QuarkXPress will keep the resolution that you put into your images or that your images have. Otherwise, if you want to downsample it, then you can set it maybe to 300 dpi, ppi, whatever you want to see here. So that's one very important option of the PDF export, because typically, as a reminder, if people choose here a high setting, they're disappointed about the quality of the PDF output. The second one, and that ties into our color management setting, is color. So I'm going to come back to that later when I show you how you can set up your own color management. Briefly, you choose between composite and separations. I don't think it makes sense for most workflows to use a separations workflow with PDF. So you probably want to have composite here, and that's where your setup is. That is your predefined setups, and we're going to create our own one. So if you want to do PDF X4, you probably want to do as is. Then fonts, which ones to include, and registration marks, the typical stuff, how much bleed. Third one that's important, so compression, color, and transparency. That's really the ones where you should look into, is whether you want to export transparency natively. So if you need PDF X1A or PDF X3, all of these will flatten transparency, or they have to flatten transparency, because That's what's written in the specs. So you can see that this option is grayed out. Vice versa. If you wonder why the option is grayed out, just go for verification none and you can choose it now. So let's export transparency natively and let's export it flattened just to show you the difference. So I'm going to create two output styles. So my custom setting is going to be a new PDF style, and my first one is going to be native transparency. Okay. Say okay, and I'm going to do that PDF demo file native. So secondly, what I'm going to do, and I'm going to use my shortcut key again. So the second one I want to do is I'm going to go into options again. I'm going to use the exact same style, native transparency. And the only thing I'm going to change now is I'm going to flatten transparency. Right? I'm going to save that also as a new PDF output style. I'm going to call that flatten. The rest is the same, right? Let's say okay. And I'm going to call this demo file flattened. Okay. So let's have a look how these things look like. So I have both files now opened in Acrobat, and I'm going to use my content editing tool here to just modify the images. And this kind of Clover was created as a native QuarkXPress document. There's an image behind it. The QuarkXPress document has 70% opacity. And if I now move the image, you can see the opacity of this kind of reddish element is natively, so the image will show underneath though I moved it. If I do the same thing here in this file where I have flattened it, you can see this as the document title that it was flattened, and I'm going to move the image to the same place, you can see that the reddish element has actually opacity baked in. So though there is no image underneath anymore, it kind of appears like it's still opaque because QuarkXPress had to create a native object because there is no native opacity in there. So the left one is what you would expect in a PDFX4 or in any PDF file with native transparency or unflattened transparency, whatever you want to call that. And the right one is what PDFX1A or PDFX3 actually requires. Advantages: the flattened one will probably output better on all the devices. On the other hand, it's larger and it can have stitching issues. So as long as you can and your printer or your print device is fine with it, I would advise you to use unflattened, so native transparency. So we're back in QuarkXPress, and remember I told you in the beginning you should really set up your own color management, your own ICC profile for your device. And that's actually quite easy. The first thing you should do is go to the edit menu, go to color setups, go to output. And that really defines your output setups for all your devices. So I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call that my printer. I'm not going to use separations. It's for PDF. I should use composite here. Of course, you can use in-rib separations if you have to. But I think most people will create composite here. I'm not going to do a grayscale. I want to print CMYK. And now QuarkXPress is going to show me all profiles in my system, my OS, that are CMYK based. So that have a CMYK output setup. I can use maybe the Euroscale coated V2 here. You can use any other that makes sense for your workflow. And if you want to convert spot inks to process, which I'm not going to do, I can actually deselect that here. And maybe one thing I would do is, my printer CMYK Euro scale coated, so I can find that later. I'm going to say okay, here's my default output setup. I'm going to say save. Now the second thing I'm going to decide is I have some EPS or PDF or AI, so vector files in here. Do I want to color management? Yes or no? Often I don't want to because I already created them in CMYK, but maybe it's an RGB setup and then I do want to do that. So if you want to manage also vector files as a second step, go into Preferences, go to the default or to the print layout that you have. If you don't have any document open, go to the default print layout, go to Color Manager and enable to color manage vector EPS or PDF. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to manage it here. So my second step. Third step is I'm going to bring up my PDF dialog. I'm going to say Options. And in here, I'm going to use my, let's say, the native transparency. And now I go to my color setting, Composite. I'm not going to use as is. Here's actually my printer, CMYK Euroscale coated. So the output setup I just created, and I'm basically done. And now I can export this. So it's actually that easy. I don't need to do more than these 3 steps to set up my basic color management setup in QuarkXPress. Create an output style, decide whether you want to color manage vector files, and then in the PDF output or in the PDF export, set the right color setup that you created. So what if you want to create a PDF X4 right now? QuarkXPress 10.2 doesn't support exporting PDF X4 directly. However, if you go into Options and you go to Color and you set your color to as is in Composite and you export transparency natively, this export will pass the GWG v4 output suite, which means this is almost an X4, just the certification is missing. So if I do this and I just do my X4 setup here to export that, I basically have a PDF file exported that should pass any X4 settings. However, there's no certification stamp in there. So how do I get that in there? That's easy. Just switch to Acrobat. And in Acrobat, I'm going to go to Edit, Preflight, and I've set up my own PDF X4 setting because I want to have the ECI output intent in there. So I'm going to say Analyze and Fix. I'm going to put that in the same folder, demo file verified, save. And you can see now it's exporting and I have a verified X4. So that was the workflow with Acrobat. What if I want to use Distiller? So I want to create a PostScript file like I showed you earlier out of QuarkXPress and still use native transparency out of QuarkXPress. Most people will tell you that PostScript can't carry transparency, native transparency. This is true when you stay in PostScript, but of course you can carry PostScript, you can carry transparency throughout PostScript, and you just need a proper distiller setting to actually do that. So if you have distiller here, go to your settings, which you typically in distiller will find on your Macintosh HD library application support, Adobe PDF settings. And what I have here is I have just called this Avenir job options. And this job option will actually, so this setting file will have different settings. And the only setting that you have to add to it is allow transparency true. And when you then select that job option in Distiller, a PDF will be created with native transparency out of the PostScript export out of QuarkXPress when you have set it to keep transparency natively. So what if you want to create a screen PDF? So a PDF that is only intended to be read online or with a download. I want to keep file sizes small, that's one thing. I want to have RGB as an output probably. And I also want to have certain elements, interactive elements enabled. So like hyperlinks or table of content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say export layout as PDF. And I'm going to go back to my options. And in here, one important thing is hyperlinks. I want to include hyperlinks. So I want to, my new list, could be my table of content list. I want to have as bookmarks in my PDF. Maybe I want to fit window for the zoom level in my screen PDF, so everything is actually in there. So that is a very important section for screen PDF, because I want hyperlinks to be live. I want table of content in there and zoom levels and stuff like that. So check that one. And of course, what's very important is the compression. So maybe I want to have here a very high compression. I will test that. Maybe it's not a good, maybe it's too high, but we'll see that. So this will keep my file size down by doing that. Colors, I don't want as is, I want an RGB color here. So second thing I should check when I do screen PDF. And for transparency, to keep file size down, it's also nice to export transparency natively. So I'm going to say okay, and maybe I'm going to save this as my PDF output style screen. Say okay. Okay, and this is my demo file screen. Let's save that as a PDF, and let's have a look how this looks like in Acrobat. So when I open this in Acrobat, one thing you will see is I have my bookmarks created here. So my first one is called PDF, PDFX, and CMS. If I click that, I go to page 1. If I click page 2, I actually go to page 2. If I go to page 3, there's nothing there. You get the idea, right? And you already also see the list here. I just created the list on this page here. So let's go back to QuarkXPress and see how my table of content was created. I'll jump to page 4, and what you can see here is I have a list. So if I go to my list palette, I have just created a list where all of the headlines that I have in here are listed as, or are incorporated in the list. And then in the PDF export settings, we use that to create that table of content. Let's go back to Acrobat. What you can also see in here, so not only the bookmarks that I have in here, if I go to page 2, I have a URL created with a hyperlink set palette in QuarkXPress. And if I click that, I will go to the live URL. Of course, Acrobat is going to throw you a security warning. So let's have a look how we created that in QuarkXPress. I'll go back to page 2. What I've done here is I've used the hyperlink palette, hyperlinks, to set up a URL that brings me to quark.com. So for screen PDF, very easy to create these kind of interactive elements into my PDF, my resulting PDF. Last thing, let's check quality. All right, let's cancel that. And if I maybe zoom in here a bit, all right, go a bit higher, you can see that, yeah, my image doesn't look so nice anymore. On the other hand, I'm saving a lot of space here. So if I go to my Finder, you can see that this is just 130K kilobyte, whereas my PDF X4 verified actually was 1.6 megabyte. And last thing I want to show you is how you can create one PDF out of a book. So that's exclusive to QuarkXPress 10. I'm going to create a new book, similar to the books that you know from versions before. And let's just call this book, right? I'm going to create a book here. And this book now can add several chapters. And the chapters that I'm going to add can be layouts of the same project. So I'm selecting my project here with all of the layouts that I have in here, right? And you can see it's open. So I've chosen that file that I have open here. And I have my title, which is an A4. I have some text, which is actually an A3, so double the area. And I have a landscape in here, right? So, and I want to add all of them into one book, into one PDF. I've added all of them into my book. You can see I have all the layout names in here. They're all in the same file. Of course, they could be in different projects in different files, but for this, I just wanted to show you this here. And I need to check this little check mark here, single file, and then I'm just going to create a PDF. And I'm going to call that PDF book. You briefly saw combining PDF. Let's have a look at how my PDF actually looked like. So there's my book, and let's use the preview function, and you can see that everything is in here. Let's open that in Acrobat to actually see how this looks like. So if I say fit, what you can see here is I have one A4, I have one A3, and I also have a landscape in here. So it stitched everything together in one big PDF file. So that's actually it for today. I showed you the 3 ways to export a PDF out of QuarkXPress, 1 which we can't recommend, 2 that are valid. We went through the options of the PDF export briefly, especially the ones that are important. You saw 3 steps how to quickly configure your color management, and if you want to have more options, like what I didn't show you was screen proofing, just consult the manual, please. We looked at how to create a PDFX, also out of Distiller, using native transparency with a special job setting. We created a screen PDF, and in QuarkXPress 10 we actually exported a book out of different chapters with different page sizes or orientations into one single PDF, and that last feature was V10 only. I also created cheat sheets for you again. You're going to get these after the session has been put online. So a PDF where you can kind of read through everything that I showed you today. And if you have questions and you haven't asked them, now is the time to actually use the questions panel to ask us, because we are live here and we're going to answer the questions. If you have tech support questions, actually here are the URLs to go to get some help. Here we are just, in this webinar, we're just going to answer some of the questions that you might have about functionality. And please don't forget that the last class, class 6, is going to happen on October 29th. If you have any suggestion for a 7th class, which we haven't planned yet, please let us know what topic we should cover. We might do a special Christmas class or something if you actually let us know what you want to see. The last class here, number 6, is going to cover ebook production. And I'll thank you for your time. I hope you had some fun and you learned some new things, and I hope to see you next time.